while this one was inspired by an American automotive icon, the '57 Chevy. But Arlen's bikes aren't just about outrageous style and fabulous paintwork, there's a lot of technical interest as well. This one features the Y2K rear suspension developed by Arlen's son Cory, and a belt-driven double overhead camshaft conversion for the Harley engine. It also has a wheel rim disc brake. And how about this one, reminiscent of an early 50s Italian racer? Or the Edelbrock engine with twin-throat carburetor on the bike commissioned by Avon Tires. Or a supercharger on what appears to be a 1920s bike. And here's another Harley overhead cam conversion, this one with a single belt-driven camshaft for each cylinder head. Those megaphone exhausts are from the famous Ness bike inspired by his own Ferrari. The side strakes on the bodywork and the bright red paintwork are the obvious styling cues. Old Harley-Davidson knuckleheads have one of Arlen's favorite engines, especially when fitted with twin-throat carburetors or superchargers, or sometimes both at once. And if one twin-choke carb is good, then surely two have to be better.
I would probably say, if you asked me which my favorite bike would be, of course, my first knucklehead, which I still have, of course I cherish that. But as far as design-wise, the smoothness bike that resembles an early Bugatti is probably right up on top there. The body bikes were real good in the 80s and the early 90s. The smoothness and the Chevy bike, and before that, the double-engine Sportster was very popular. That went all over the world.
It's not surprising that Arlen's twin-engine Harley has been shown around the world. Built in the 1980s, it was possibly the most outrageous motorcycle ever seen. It was all done in the worst possible taste, but it stopped people in their tracks, whether stationary or on the street. And yes, you could ride it. Arlen never builds a bike that can't be ridden. Riding the Ferrari bike must have been an experience only to be savoured after popping the blood pressure pills. It has a supercharger and two twin-choke carburetors for each of the V-twin cylinders. Oh, and we forgot to mention nitrous oxide injection. Enzo Ferrari could never have envisaged an engine like this, even in his wildest nightmares.
The Ferrari bike, which you're talking about, with a one blower on each head and nitrous and two carburetors per cylinder, that was pretty tricky. To tell you the truth, I've never really had it on a dyno, but I rode it to the Redwoods one year, and I got on it fairly hard passing cars and stuff sometimes, and it run faster than I want to ride it. I know that. The stuff, the superchargers. A lot of that was to do with the roadster shows in the early days when I was in competition there in the early years. And of course you got extra points for having different designs and engineering and stuff like that. So I always did like superchargers and wild stuff. I like to put a turbo or a supercharger or overhead cam, stuff that normal people usually doesn't have. Even nowadays when you see all the biker build-offs and stuff, you pretty much see the guys taking a motor out of the box and putting it in the bike. And we like to go the next step and do something different.
Arlen's willingness to always go the next step, whether in terms of style, paintwork or technology, is why big-name corporate clients regularly tread the path to his door, as does the occasional rock star. This bike combines the two. It was built for Gibson guitars. But for all of the outrageousness, sorry, make that outrageousness, Arlen's favorite bike is this comfortable road cruiser. He's put over 300,000 miles on it, and while many of the other Ness bikes will never cover a fraction of that mileage, all of them have to be rideable under normal road conditions.
Oh, that's one thing from day one, that anything we built, you had to be able to ride it. And some rode better than others, but yeah, that was always very important, because in the old days most of the stuff was show bikes, and then people would say, oh, you can't ride that, or that doesn't run, but that was we always made that a must.
The same goes for Arlen's son Cory, who, not surprisingly, has been working on two-wheelers since he got his first Schwinn sidewalk cruiser. He's been an acknowledged top designer in the custom bike world for some 20 years, and this is the bike for which he is perhaps best known, the drop-dead gorgeous Curvaceous. Along with his father, Cory has a design contract with the new American brand Victory. Both he and Arlen have signature models in the Victory range, and both have had a lot of styling input into the standard machines as well. The flowing lines of the Curvaceous have definitely found their way into the Victory's profile.
You know, the Curvaceous it flows, the tank flows really nicely into the seating area, and then real nicely into the rear fender, and on both bikes, you know, on the Curvaceous as well as the Victory. And the Victory has just fresh styling. It's something new. It's not to be another Harley type look-alike. It's its own motorcycle and its own tooling, and they use all of their own components. When they first built the motorcycle, they built a good motorcycle, but cosmetically it wasn't attractive to me, and it wasn't attractive to a lot of other people. But it did work, and then as time went on, and they realized they needed to make a change, and we came aboard, and we tried to get them to go a little more our way, you know, and it seems to be working.
The Discovery TV channel runs a series called Biker Build-Off, in which the big names compete to build what the audience will eventually select as the best custom bike in the country.
Well, the latest show that I did with Biker Build-Off is my second one. I built the 3-cylinder engine, which was designed by a guy named Jim Fueling, and originally the engine was designed for the front cylinder, the third cylinder, to be out front, which looked out of place, and I don't think it ever really caught on too well, because it just looked like something was weird. Wow. So what I did, it did interest me. So I rotated the motor back, where the center cylinder was now almost straight up and down, and it looked like almost like an airplane engine. I mean, it's long and massive and beefy, and usually the traditional way of mounting that engine was that the front cylinder was actually hanging outside of the frame, while what I did by rotating it back, I stretched the frame about 10 or 12 inches, but I was able to fit the whole motor in the frame. And with that, use a real long, nicely flowing gas tank, and some handlebars that come back far enough so you can drive the thing comfortably, because I had to drive the bike about 700 miles on the show. And it seemed to work, you know, and the bike handled well. I think it looked really wild, and I think I ended up doing a good job, because I think a lot of people come and look at the bike and they say, boy, that's a nice looking bike, but they don't even realize it's a 3-cylinder until maybe you point it out, or they catch it maybe the second time around. So I think if that's maybe the impression, I think it did a pretty good job then. It was the smoothest engine I've ever had in any motorcycle, any custom bike, and it ran real well. I probably need to spend a little more time on carburation to really tune it in, but it was, you know, they gave you 10 days to build these things and then put a bunch of miles on it. But it was very smooth, had nice power, and you know, it made it, you know, before you even got started on sheet metal or wheels, it made it unique. So it was a neat piece to use.
For his build-off entry, Arlen stayed faithful to the V-twin, but came up with a radical frame.
The whole frame is made out of the same radiuses. It's very low, and the motor sticks out of the center of the frame. It's a double top bar, and the gas tanks actually mount below the motors on the side of the frame. It's a fairly different bike. We had a lot of fun building it, and on the ride we went further. The 600 miles that you need to ride was over in Puerto Rico, and they had a Puerto Rico bike week, and it was a big hit there. It seemed to please the crowd.
Arlen didn't just rely on the radical frame to score brownie points with the biker build-off audience. His engine displayed all of the mechanical ingenuity that has long been associated with his name.
It's very mechanical. It has like 5 belts. You know, there's a belt running the supercharger, there's a belt running the overhead cam, there's a big primary belt, and then there's a dual belt rear wheel to hold the extra horsepower. So it's very mechanical, and I like that a lot.
Out in the Arlen Ness workshops, there's always a lot going on, whether it's with the bikes that Arlen and Cory are building, or simply work on customer bikes. Both Arlen and Cory have long offered signature editions, which are essentially production versions of some of their custom designs, but the customers themselves often want to put their own individual stamp on their machines, and the Ness catalog allows them to do this without having to go down the expensive and time-consuming handmade route. Motorcycles of any brand can be personalized with Ness products that have been developed over 2 generations of custom bike building. Each time that Arlen Ness comes out with a new show bike, people are already wondering what the next step will be. Well, for now at least, this is the next step. It's the Mack Ness jet bike, powered by a helicopter jet turbine engine. If Arlen had to be careful with the throttle on the twin supercharged Ferrari bike, you can bet your life he'll be treating this one with respect. And if you're about to ask if it will even run on the road, then you should remember this is an Arlen Ness bike we're looking at here. They all run on the road. Before moving a few miles inland, Arlen Ness Motorcycles was based in Hayward, one of the East Bay cities across the bay from San Francisco. Just up the road is the city of Oakland, where for more than 50 years, the Grand National Roadster Show at the Oakland Coliseum was the #1 show on both the custom car and custom bike scene. To win at Oakland with your bike was enough to establish you as top man on the chopper show scene. And Arlen did so on numerous occasions. He also has had his bike on display at the Oakland Museum as part of its California Culture exhibition. Nowadays, the East Bay is still a hotbed of chopper activity, but the Grand National Roadster Show has moved 400 miles south to the Los Angeles County Fairgrounds near Pomona. Bikes are still a big part of the show and getting bigger. At the Grand National Roadster Show 2005, the motorcycles completely filled one of the giant exhibition halls. And whether it's in Northern or Southern California, the show is still a great place to check out who's doing what in the world of custom bikes.
Across an expansion bridge, you see this from a rigid. You're sitting at the bar, you're seeing this. You got the rigid, not Matt. It's got air suspension front and rear. You can actually adjust it as you ride. You got a big bump coming up, you want to take a little bit more shock. You got a nice little smooth road, you just want to be on a little bounce. You're all right. All you got to remember is when you get off of it, instead of throwing out the kickstand, you got to dump it. Drop the front, drop the rear. Or if there's a bunch of people around checking you out, you know, what up? Woo! That's Chingon. Not bad, 3 weeks.
Chingon is the work of Matt Hotch, who won the Discovery Channel's 2004 Biker Build-Off contest to make him top man on the TV chopper scene.
My grandfather and my dad were always into cars and motorcycles, and my grandfather rode them after the war, kind of a hill climb, old school biker. So when I was younger, you know, I couldn't really afford stuff, so I always collected junk. I bought 5 to make 1, so I just kind of learned to work on things. And it kind of started in Minneapolis, and we moved to Kansas for a few years, and eventually came out here to California and found that I could make a living at it when I was about 15. So when we lived in Kansas, I was only maybe, I think, 10 or 11 or something like that. But I collected, that's where my interest in mechanics came from, whether it be cars and mopeds and stuff like that. So when I moved out to California, I was into Volkswagens and cars, and eventually actually traded one for a Harley, and that's how it kind of started. The early influences were definitely just for getting interest in the mechanics and how things work. And then the creative end of it came when I got into Harleys. People ask me how I learned it, and I guess it's just a natural thing, the creativity process. So I just have a gift of seeing it in my head. The mechanical aspect just came from screwing things up. Just learned not to do it twice. I actually didn't have any training at all. I was horrible in school, got kicked out my senior year. All I used to carry was a pen to class. So I I barely skimmed by, but I just found somewhere else to focus my energy, and that was with my hands. So I sold my first bike when I was younger, before I started my business, and then just kind of just rolled into being able to build what's in my head with other people's money, and they trusted and loved my designs and gave me full whatever I wanted to do, carte blanche. So it was actually really cool. My kind of trademarks that I have are like cleaning up all the wires on the handlebars throughout the bike, and the bike's built around the cables and all the workings of the bike rather than just building the bike and putting them on afterward. I'm into flowing lines. Everything flows from the front to the back, and just coming up with different stuff rather than following everybody else. I try to just keep ahead of everyone. The air suspension that I developed we did for the biker build-off on Discovery Channel. Air suspension's been around. It's been on cars forever, on big rigs. It's been on Harleys for a little bit, but basically for stock stuff, and it doesn't go all the way to the ground. So I just kind of came up with adapted automotive stuff to the motorcycles, and was able to make it with no kickstand, but still make it rideable. So I was the first one to kind of drop it on the ground. Yeah, a lot of people, it kind of boggles their minds. They really don't understand the concept of it, so we have it on an air cylinder so we can kind of show people, kind of give them an idea how it works.
People always say, you know what, it's a real nice bike, but it's too low. You know what? You're right, it is low. It's on the ground. Normally you fire the bike up, air pumps into the tank. As soon as you get the right amount of pressure, air it up. Riding on airbags, front and rear. Can you ride this bike? Can you corner it? Yeah, you can ride this bike. All you gotta do is you gotta remember when you get off, you don't kick your kickstand out, you hit the switches. As long as you haven't had too many beers, you're gonna be able to remember that. Just keep going, not bad. Matt built this thing 3 weeks. Check out this one, 3 months. It's a chopper. You put the air in the lower legs, so it's about 8 inches worth of travel. Single-sided swing arm. You also concealed the brake, and the motor mount, and the petcock, and the fuel transfers are all one, and it doesn't look gaudy. Come check it out.
This is the shop, basically where the magic happens. 90% of our business is actually parts. I do pipes. I have a patent on a springless kickstand, and I have a patent on flush mount gas caps. So basically all the parts come in and we stock them and ship them out in this section of the shop. This is basically what makes most of the money right here. All right, let's go back this way. The rest of the stuff, or the rest of the shop, is basically just me. I'm the only one that does the fabrication, the assembly, the building of the motorcycles. I'm the only one that touches it. So this whole area back here is mine. Everybody else that works here basically just does sales, answers the phone, takes care of the business end of it, and it kind of leaves me to be able to build. So these are just a couple bikes that I have in process, just some projects. This one's in for getting some stuff repainted for it. This is where most of the grinding and the welding and all the sparks, anything that can catch on fire, basically happens in here. This is the only concrete I have in the entire shop. The rest of it's hardwood floors. So this is pretty much where most of the bikes that I build are one-off stuff. So this is a frame that I had built, and I'm just in the process of doing the sheet metal work. But this will have the air suspension where it sits on the ground and stuff. I'm just probably halfway through the sheet metal process. This bike we built for